Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Sanhedrin Lamed Hey, Sanhedrin 35. We're going to start on Lamed Dal and Lamed Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. Today's Daf is dedicated for a Shmir for the Chayalim, a Tel for the Shvuyim, and a Yeshua for Am Yisrael on this 8th Tzara. Daf Yomi tells us that done in the Fashos, Dine Fashos done in Bayom, that a capital case we judge during the day and we complete it during the day, meaning to say the beginning and the conclusion have to be at day and not at night. So the Gemara says, what's our source for this? Says by the sin of Baal Peor. It says in Bamidbar, God said to Moshe, take the heads of the people, hang them to God, neged Hashemesh, in front of the sun. And that will bring back God's wrath after the sin of Baal Peor in Parshas Pinchas. So it says, neged Hashemesh. So therefore, they're executed in the sunlight. So the Gemara goes on a tangent. How do we know that Hokah means to hang? So it says, it says that with respect to Shaul, that what happened was the Givonim requested from David that he should hang the 7 sons of Saul as a punishment that Saul had killed 7 of the Givonim. And the story is that in the time of David, there were 3 years of famine in a row. And David went to ask at the Urim V'Tumim what was the reason for the punishment. And the answer was because he did not properly give a eulogy for Shaul, that he quickly hurried to bury him. And also, another reason for the punishment was because Shaul killed the Kohanim of the city of Nov. And also that he killed with them 7 Givonim who were wood choppers and water carriers. And Yeshua had made a promise not to hurt them. And so once he heard this, immediately David called the Givonim and he wanted to appease them. He said that they should forgive the children of Israel, so therefore there would no longer be a famine. And the Givonim said that they're not going to forgive the Jewish people until they execute through hanging 7 of Saul's sons, corresponding to the oath that the Jewish people had made to the Givonim. And Saul had killed 7 Givonim in Nov. So David gave to the Givonim 7 of Saul's children, and they hung them. And also, then he reburied Saul in his family grave. And he gave him eulogy, and then the famine stopped. So that's how Rashi explains the Gemara in the book of Shmuel. So it says, how do we know that Hokah means hanging? And so the Gemara refers to this incident. And it also states, and so it also says that Ritzpah, the daughter of Aya, she took the sackcloth and she put it towards the rock. She spread it out on the rock at the beginning of the harvest season. And so therefore it's clear, Rashi says, that the bodies were revealed because they were hanging on trees. And what about the fact, Rashi says, how were they able to do this? How was David allowed to participate in this? You're not allowed to leave a body hanging overnight. So the Rashi explains, we say in Yevamos that it's better to have one letter of the Torah be uplifted and consecrate God's name in public. So everybody would see it and ask, what's the reason for this? And the reason is because they stuck their hands and they were princes and they attacked the children and they attacked converts. They attacked the Givonim, and that's the reason why they are executed. It's a very powerful point. So that even though it's a sin to hang these bodies overnight, better to have the whole Torah, better to uproot a letter from the Torah and sanctify God's name in public. So you see that this is not the way you treat converts. The Ksiv, and it states, "Vayomer Hashem Moshe," God said to Moshe, "Kachas kol rashei ha'am." And Moshe said to the people, God said to Moshe, take all the heads of the people. So the question is, if the people sinned, what was the reason for hanging the heads of the people? So what did they do wrong? So Moshe. So God said to Moshe, mean to say, take all the heads of the people and go make many, many courts to judge all those who are violating this sin, and hang them because they and hang all these people because they worship Baal Peor. And so how is it hanging? Isn't it stoning? So we're supposed to say that when it comes to stoning, first you stone them and then you hang them. So the Gemara says, what's the reason? My time. What's the reason why we need so many courts? That one court is not allowed to adjudicate two cases in one day. It can be. When do we say that one court cannot do two executions in one day? When it's two different types of death, because you need to find, or two different crimes, you need to find different reasonings for each case. And so maybe you won't do enough proper research. If it's one execution and one sin, done, and you're allowed to do it. So what's the reason why they had so many courts all on the same day? Ella Kadesha Yashuv Charon Af Israel, so that God's anger will be relieved from the Jewish people, and God will see that all of them are engaged in this matter, and so therefore, as a result of this, and they're zealous for God's honor, God's anger will be relieved. So the Gemara says, Dine Mamanos, a monetary case, you can complete during the day, both to be liable or not liable. But a capital case, you complete during the day, but to be acquit. But to be convicted, you have to wait till the next day, because maybe they'll find the reasoning overnight. So the Gemara says, Menani, what's the source for the idea that by capital case, you're not allowed to convict the same day? So the Gemara says, Amar Chanina Makra, it says in the pasuk in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 21, Milei Asi Mishpat Tzedek Yolimba V'Atam Meratzlim. It says, I was filled with justice, Tzedek Yolimba, meaning to say that they waited overnight in order to make sure it was correct. And now now that they're not doing it, they're like murderers. That's the verse from Isaiah, that you're doing the justice so quickly, you're not waiting overnight to make sure that there was no mistakes. The Rav Amar Me'acha, Rav says from here, Ishru, then it says in the pasuk, Ishru Chamotz, meaning to say, Ashru Chamotz, meaning to say the pasuk is saying, Ashru, meaning strengthen Chamotz, the oppressed, Dayan Shemechametz Estino. This is strengthen the ones, a court who mechametz, he delays like the word chametz, he delays his judgment so that he can get the proper ruling. Vidach ashru chamotz. What does that mean? Velo chometz. It means, what does it mean? Strengthen the one chamotz. Strengthen the one who is stolen and not the robber. That's how he interprets it. Vidach hai malesi mishba mayavidway. What does he do with that first pasuk from Isaiah? What does he do from that pasuk? The first pasuk from Isaiah chapter 1, verse 21. They're both from Isaiah. They're both from the first chapter. But what does he do with it? So he says, "Hi Malesi Mishpah my Avilei Kedar Belazar Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Amar Rabbi Yitzchak called Tanis Shemalinim Boas that's stuck on a fast that you're supposed to give charity right away." So any fast that you Shemalinim Boas at staka, that you are delaying the charity, it's as though you're killing anybody. It's as though you're murdering, meaning you have to give the charity right away. And so therefore, if you do it, it's as though it's as though you're murdering somebody. As it says, Malesi Mishpat Tzedek. That's only when do you have to get can you not delay it? When it comes to bread and dates. But when it comes to coins, wheat, and barley, then there's no problem in delaying it. Rashi says as follows, that they had the practice of giving out on the night of the fast to give charity, and that way the people would get the money and they'd be able to right away eat as soon as the fast ends. And if they would wait, then the poor people will be hungry. But that's only in a case where they gave out the bread and the dates, which is something ready to eat. But if it would be wheat, coins, and barley, then the poor people are not relying upon it that night. And so therefore, there's no problem if they delayed it till the next day. And so therefore, what they would do is at the end of the fast day, basically they would be giving out the food properly. So And basically, if you didn't give out the food properly, the poor people couldn't eat. And so therefore you couldn't delay till the next day. But if you're giving out stuff that wasn't ready to eat, then you could, then it wouldn't be a prohibition. So now we're up to the next point. Therefore it says, Lefikach ein danin, and therefore you're not allowed to, it says in Mishnah, you don't judge a capital case, you don't complete it that day to convict. And so as a result of this, you don't start on Friday and you don't start on Erev Yontif. My time, what's the reason why you don't start on Friday? So what's the reason? Because it's not possible. Because you can't do it. Because what are you going to do? Let's say you want to judge a case on Friday, and then you want to announce the verdict on Friday. Maybe they're going to see a reason to convict on Friday. And then what's going to happen is they're going to have to wait till Sunday, and it's going to be a delaying of the ruling, and that's a big problem. And so therefore you can't do that. Let's say they want to judge it on Friday, and then announce the ruling on Shabbos, and then they want to execute him on Shabbos. You can't do that either because in the execution from the court cannot override Shabbos. You want to kill him on Saturday night. You can't do that. You need to kill him during the day. So let's say you want to announce the ruling on Shabbos, and then you execute him on Sunday. That's also no good. That's delaying the court. That's delaying the ruling, and that's considered to be considered to be afflicting him, and you're not allowed to do that. So it's not clear 100% what's the source for this. The Yad Ramah says the reason why you can't delay the ruling, delay the execution, which is agony, is called a violation of Ahavto Re'echa Kamocha. So so let's say you want to judge him on Friday, and conclude it on Sunday. No, that's no good. The judges will forget their reasoning. And Afagav, and even though the Shnei Sofer Dayanan Om Demofneim Kosvin Divrei Amazakim Divrei Amachayvin, and even though the two judges are standing, the two scribes are standing there and they're writing down the reasonings in front of the court of what the words to convict and acquit. It's still not enough. Even though we're going to have the exact words, the exact logic, they're going to forget. A beautiful phrase. The exact logic of people will forget because that they can't write down. And even though they can read the reasonings, they won't be able to remember exactly the logic, and so therefore it's not possible. So Amarle. Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan to take for us mates mitzvah docha Shabbos. So he introduces us to a topic which is going to come around and be connected in the end. We should have the burial of a mace mitzvah. If you find an unaccompanied dead body, you should be able to bury that person on Shabbos. And Mikal V'chomer, it's from our logical argument. Ma avodah shedocha Shabbos, just like service of God in the temple overrides the Shabbos. Ma avodah shedocha Shabbos for us mitzvah docha osah. But the burial of a dead body overrides service in the temple. If you have an unaccompanied dead body, you override your service in the temple to bury them. How do we know that? So we learn it out from his sister. Because the time we have it in Brisa, this Brisa appears several times in the Shabbos, appears in Brachos, Megillah, and Nazir, and Zvachim. And what does the Brisa say? So that the Nazirite is not allowed to become go to the funeral of his father, his mother, his brother, his sister. What's it coming to tell us? Why does it have to say all of this, all of these reasonings? We already learned this from earlier verses. So what's the word v'lachos? So to tell us, he's going to make shachta and pesach. He's going to circumcise the son. He's on his way to do a mitzvah. We're on top of 35b. And he heard that somebody died, meaning to say he heard a relative died. I might think, okay, go to the relative's funeral. So we say, no, the Nazir is not allowed to go. But I might think just like he can't become ritually impure to go to his sister's funeral if he sees like a A homeless man dead on the floor, he can't help him, he can't bury him. The verse says for his sister he cannot become tamei. But if he sees an unaccompanied dead body, he has to take care of it, and that overrides the mitzvahs that he's doing, and it becomes tamei, and then he won't bring the korban pesach. Shabbos shenitches v'nei avoda eno din shetei kfuras mitzvah docha osa. So then the Torah tells us, what about the case of Shabbos? The Gemara tells us Shabbos, that which is overridden on account of service, shouldn't for sure be overridden by burial of a dead body. Meaning to say, we violate the Shabbos to serve in the temple, so too shouldn't we for sure violate the Shabbos to bury a dead body, since we stopped doing our service to bury the dead body. So we say that, no, from execution, we prove that that's not the case. Execution overrides the service in the temple, but it does not override the Shabbos. So first of all, the Gemara says, but wait, the execution itself should override the Shabbos. From a logical argument. So just like service in the temple, which overrides the Shabbos, just like service in the temple. So just like service in the temple, which overrides the Shabbos, execution overrides it. Even if he's attached to the altar, if the killer runs and holds onto the altar, no such thing as a sanctuary for a murderer. We take him away and we execute him. Shabbos, which is overridden on account of service in the temple, for sure it should be the case that execution of a murderer should override the Shabbos. So Amarava, so if that's the case, why does the execution of a murderer not take place on Shabbos? So Rav explains, we already established this from the Academy of Be'er Shmuel. The Tan of Be'er Shmuel, Tevaro H, says you're not allowed to burn a fire on Shabbos. But why is this the only prohibition of Shabbos that's listed explicitly in the Torah? What about all the other 38 of the Av Malachos? So Matam Omer, why does it say Tevaro H that you're not allowed to burn a fire on Shabbos? Matam Omer, what do you mean? Why? Ilu Rabbi Yossi, the Gemara says that we've already established in the Gemara in Shabbos and Yevamos and in Krisos that there's a reason why it says Lo Savaro, either according to Rabbi Yossi or according to Rabbi Nassan. Ilu Rabbi Yossi, Lulav Yotzas. If it was according to Rabbi Yossi, it was listed separately to teach us that unlike all the other prohibitions, fire is just a straight prohibition. According to Rabbi Nassan, to teach us that if you violate all of the prohibitions of Shabbos with one halama, meaning to say you just forgot it was Shabbos, you're going to get a sin offering for each and every one. So El Amarava, so says Rava, what does it mean when it says Lo Savaro Eish B'chol Moshvosechem? Why does it have to say in all your dwelling places? Tana Moshavos Kasha. He's bothered by the fact that it says Moshavos. Moshavos Matam Omer. Why does it say Moshavos? Michti Shabbos Chovas Hagufi. Since Shabbos is an obligation on the person, Chovas Haguf Noeges Bein Ba'aretz Bein B'chutz La'aretz, and the obligation of the body applies both in the land of Israel and also outside the land of Israel. Moshavos Tekasav Rachmana Lamoi. If that's the case, why does it say Moshavos in the Torah? Since it's an obligation on your person about Shabbos, why does it have to do with where you live? So therefore, because it says, since if there'll be a person who has a sin that's liable for death, and he will be put to death, I might think he's also put to death on Shabbos. So what do I learn from the fact that it says those who desecrate will put to death? Does that mean to say that this will be upheld with all other prohibitions, with the exception of those that are permitted to violate the Shabbat. So or maybe I might think that the verse tells us that you could even put them to death on Shabbos. Mani Mekayim Lumas B'chol Avlo b'Shabbos. So Eno El Afilo b'Shabbos. Are we allowed to execute the person on Shabbos? Talmud Omer was Tevaresh B'chol Moshvo Sechem. Says here you shall not burn a fire in all your dwelling places on Shabbos. Or Alon Omer, and later on it states, and it says that also the pasuk that still be a law in all your dwelling places. Based and just like that verse that said later on has to do with the murderers in the court. Means that you're not allowed to violate. You're not allowed to execute somebody in your bezdin, and you can't violate Shabbos to execute somebody. And that's what Talmud Rishmal taught, that from the word Moshe Vosdechem, we learned that you don't execute somebody on Shabbos. Amar Abaya Hashad Amras Ein Ritzicha Dochas Shabbos. Now that we established that the court did not execute somebody on Shabbos, if that's the case, Ein Ritzicha Dochas Avoda Mikal V'chomer. So for sure, execution should not override the service in the temple, and we should learn that from a Kal V'chomer. Why do we need a pasuk to tell us? So just like Shabbos, which is overridden on account of the service, the execution does not override it. Avoda sheidocha as Shabbos, service which overrides the Shabbos. For sure, execution should not override it. Why is there a specific verse? Why does it specific pasuk telling us to take him from the altar to put him to death? So that's to teach us not that you execute somebody even while they're holding on to the temple. We could learn that from a Kal V'chomer. It's just to teach us that if a person wants to do a individual offering, then that does not override the Shabbos. And so therefore, and that's what it's teaching us. Meaning to say that if somebody who is obligated to be put to death by the court wants to come and bring an individual offering, we don't allow him. But if he wants to bring a communal offering, then it overrides the Shabbos. It says, so Rava says, if that's really your drasha from a Kal V'chomer, that service with the communal offering overrides the bezdin, then for sure we should have said execution of the court should not override even an individual offering from a Kal V'chomer. So just like Yom Tov, which is overridden by an individual offering, execution does not override it. Karban Yachad Dochas Yom Tov, an individual offering, which does override the Yom Tov. So for sure it should be the case that execution should not override it. And this only works according to the position in the Dharma Davos Krivim Yom Tov, that voluntary offerings are not brought on Yom Tov. According to when they say they're brought on Yom Tov, so therefore an individual offering overrides Yom Tov. So shouldn't we say Kal V'chomer that an execution does not override it? So if that's the case, so not only according to the one who says that the voluntary offering is not brought on Yom Tov, because if that would be the case, we should add on because all the sacrifice will be going from that. Even according to one that says that they're not brought on Yom Tov, from that altar that's designated for me. What is this? That's the carbon tama, which is the communal offering. And for this, the pasuk has to tell us, and so we see from the language of the pasuk that the execution of the court overrides even a communal offering. And now, like Abaye says that it's only talking about an individual offering. Okay, we'll stop here.